A 13-year-old boy leaves home with almost nothing. No money, no powerful family, no clear destination. He walks hundreds of miles across France, surviving one day at a time and taking odd jobs just to earn his next meal. Most people would have called it desperation. But decades later, that same boy's name would appear on some of the most expensive bags ever made. His initials would become a global symbol of wealth, status, and success. Today, people wait months, and sometimes years, to own products carrying those two simple letters, LV. So how did a poor village boy transform into the founder of one of the most valuable luxury brands in history? Why did a simple wooden trunk change the travel industry forever? And how did one man's obsession with craftsmanship create an empire that still dominates the luxury world more than 170 years later? This isn't just the story of a fashion brand. It's the story of vision, timing, relentless craftsmanship, and one decision that changed luxury forever. In the early 1800s, France was a country caught between hardship and hope. The scars of revolution still lingered, while the Industrial Revolution was slowly changing the way people worked and lived. Cities were expanding, railroads were beginning to connect distant regions, and wealthy families were traveling more than ever before, carrying everything they owned in large wooden chests across rough roads, muddy paths, and crowded train stations. Travel itself was changing, but almost no one was paying attention to one simple problem: luggage. Heavy, awkward, and poorly designed. Most travel trunks had rounded lids that helped rainwater run off during horse-drawn carriage journeys. That design made perfect sense for the old world. But as trains and steamships became more common, travelers faced a new challenge. Rounded trunks couldn't be stacked efficiently. They wasted valuable space, shifted during transport, and made packing unnecessarily difficult. It was an overlooked problem, and sometimes, overlooked problems create the biggest business opportunities. Long before anyone called him a designer, Louis Vuitton was simply a poor boy born in 1821 in the tiny village of Antry in eastern France. His father worked as a farmer and carpenter, while his mother made hats. Life was simple, but it was far from easy. Then tragedy struck. Louis lost his mother while he was still a child, and after his father remarried, family life reportedly became increasingly difficult. Although some details of that period remain uncertain, one fact is undeniable. At just 13 years old, Louis made an extraordinary decision. He left home with no money, no train ticket, no map, and no guarantee that he would survive. His destination was Paris, nearly 300 miles away. Today, that distance can be covered in just a few hours by car, but in the 1830s, for a young teenager traveling alone, it demanded months of determination and endurance. Louis walked almost the entire way. Along the journey, he accepted whatever work he could find. He repaired fences, carried supplies, helped local craftsmen, and took odd jobs in exchange for food, shelter, or a few coins. Every village became another classroom, and every craftsman became another teacher. Without realizing it, he was collecting something far more valuable than money: skills, patience, and a deep understanding that quality work always found customers. By the time Louis finally reached Paris, the city was transforming into the economic heart of France. Construction projects filled the streets, luxury goods were becoming symbols of social status, and the wealthy were no longer buying products alone. They were buying reputation. Paris rewarded excellence, but only if you could prove yourself. Finding work wasn't easy. Thousands of people arrived in the city hoping for a better life, creating fierce competition everywhere. Fortunately, Louis already possessed one valuable skill. He knew how to work with wood, and that single ability opened the first real door of his career. He became an apprentice to Monsieur Marichal, one of Paris's most respected makers of custom travel boxes and packing cases. At first glance, the job seemed ordinary. Build boxes, pack clothes, repair luggage. But behind the scenes, it was far more important than it appeared. In the 19th century, wealthy families rarely packed their own belongings before long journeys. Professional playmakers specialized in carefully arranging clothing, jewelry, fragile objects, books, and personal treasures so everything would survive weeks of travel. Packing wasn't considered a chore, it was considered an art. Every dress had to remain wrinkle-free. Every glass bottle had to arrive intact. Every valuable possession had to fit perfectly. A single mistake could destroy belongings worth more than an average worker earned in years. Louis wasn't just making trunks. He was earning trust. And in the luxury business, trust is often worth far more than the product itself. For years, Louis quietly perfected his craft. He observed how different customers traveled, noticed which trunks broke most often, and watched servants struggle to carry oversized luggage through crowded stations. Most importantly, he listened. Customers complained about damaged belongings, wasted space, and unreliable designs. Most craftsmen heard complaints. Louis heard opportunities. Then history handed him an unexpected advantage. By the 1840s and 1850s, Europe was entering a transportation revolution. Railways expanded rapidly across France. Steamships connected countries faster than ever before, and travel was becoming more comfortable, more frequent, and more accessible to wealthy families. But transportation had evolved much faster than luggage. Old-fashioned trunks were still designed for horse-drawn carriages. The world had changed, yet the luggage hadn't. That gap between old products and new customer needs would become the foundation of an empire. And Louis Vuitton was one of the very few people who truly understood it. Even more importantly, someone incredibly powerful had started noticing his remarkable craftsmanship. Someone whose approval could change his entire future overnight. That influential customer was none other than Empress Eugénie, the wife of Napoleon III, ruler of the Second French Empire. In 19th-century France, serving the imperial family wasn't just another prestigious job. It was the ultimate endorsement. The empress traveled constantly, carrying elaborate gowns, delicate fabrics, jewelry, perfumes, gloves, hats, and countless personal belongings. Every item had to arrive in perfect condition because a single damaged dress before a royal event wasn't simply inconvenient. It was unacceptable to be why this time. Louis Vuitton had built a reputation for precision, discretion, and absolute reliability. Word quietly spread among Paris's wealthy elite that if you wanted your possessions packed perfectly, there was one man you could trust. The royal appointment changed everything. Suddenly, Louis wasn't just serving customers. He was serving the highest level of society. And in the luxury business, reputation travels even faster than products. The wealthy copied the habits of royalty, and if the empress trusted Louis Vuitton, they wanted the same experience. His waiting list grew longer, demand continued to rise, but Louis wasn't interested in remaining an employee forever. Years of experience had taught him far more than how to build trunks. He had carefully observed how customers behaved, what competitors ignored, and where the future of travel was heading. Louis believed luxury wasn't simply about decoration or expensive materials. It was about solving problems so effectively that customers would never want to switch brands. That philosophy became the foundation of every decision he made. Then, in 1854, after years of mastering his craft, Louis took the biggest risk of his life and opened his own workshop in Paris. Hanging outside was a simple promise: securely packs the most fragile objects. Specializing in packing fashions. It wasn't a slogan about low prices or being the biggest company in France. Instead, it focused entirely on trust. That decision was deliberate because Louis understood something many entrepreneurs still overlook today. People buying premium products rarely make their decision based on price. They make it based on confidence. Every satisfied customer became free advertising among France's wealthiest families, and that growing reputation soon led to the innovation that would define his entire career. At first glance, the idea looked almost too simple. Instead of giving his travel trunks the traditional rounded tops that everyone else used, Louis designed them with completely flat lids. Many competitors laughed. Rounded trunks had existed for generations, so why change something that had always worked? But Louis wasn't designing for yesterday. He was designing for tomorrow. Flat-top trunks could be stacked neatly inside railway cars and steamships, wasting less space, staying more stable during transport, and making travel significantly more efficient. Transport companies could carry more luggage at once, while travelers found their belongings easier to organize and transport. Customers immediately noticed the difference. The product wasn't merely beautiful, it was smarter. This was classic innovation, not by inventing an entirely new category, but by improving an existing product so dramatically that customers wondered why nobody had thought of it before. It became one of the earliest examples of user-centered product design. Louis wasn't selling wooden trunks. He was selling convenience, reliability, and peace of mind. Those qualities justified premium prices, and soon wealthy travelers across Europe wanted one. Orders arrived faster than his workshop could produce them. But success creates a different kind of problem. The more valuable a product becomes, the more people try to copy it. Counterfeit makers appeared almost immediately, and other craftsmen began copying Louis's trunk designs, hoping customers wouldn't notice the difference. For many businesses, imitation destroys growth. For Louis Vuitton, however, it triggered another breakthrough. Instead of lowering prices to compete with copycats, he focused on making his products impossible to mistake for anyone else's. First came a distinctive gray canvas, followed by a recognizable red-striped pattern. Later, another beige and brown design strengthened the brand's identity even further. These patterns weren't created purely for beauty. They were early forms of brand protection. If customers could instantly recognize a genuine Louis Vuitton trunk from across a room, fake products became much easier to identify. Today, companies spend millions protecting trademarks and visual identities, but Louis understood that principle more than 150 years ago. He realized something timeless. A luxury brand isn't protected only by lawyers. It's protected by identity. If customers can instantly recognize your product and instantly trust its quality, you've built something competitors can't easily steal. That idea would become one of the greatest competitive advantages in business history. But Louis Vuitton wasn't finished innovating. Another challenge was already approaching. Europe was changing faster than ever before. Industrial factories were beginning to produce goods at unprecedented speed, and mass production promised lower prices for everyone. Many traditional craftsmen feared they would disappear in a world increasingly driven by efficiency. Would handmade luxury survive against factories capable of producing goods faster than ever before? Most businesses would soon face an impossible choice: produce faster or remain exceptional. Louis Vuitton chose a path almost no one expected.